Welcome to Assigned to Elevate. I am your host, Elder Lady Sheila Baskett, and I want to welcome my special guest, Pastor Natashia Lewis. Welcome to Assigned to Elevate. I am so happy to have you.
So glad to be here.
Wow. Well, I do want to say our purpose at Assigned to Elevate is to showcase ministries and those who have a servant's heart, to be in ministry who breathe and live to elevate people and showcase their purpose on elevating and building people up. And you are just that purpose. We got a lot to talk about on today, girl. Wow. I'm so excited. You're my sister, you're my friend. We just connected, and I really believe it was God ordained that we do so. Well, when I thought about what to talk about, I said, she's the one. Pastor Natashia Lewis, I want to ask you, just to go ahead and get started, who are you? Where are you from? Just go ahead and tell our viewers, who is Pastor, prophet, teacher, co-host? Who is she?
Wow. I guess I really don't have a definition. If I would just give you, that's a great question. I would say I'm God's child. I'm obedient to the Lord. And that's really, to sum it all up, that would be my definition of who I am. Anything that God would give me a gift to do, I do that. And anything that God needs of me, I make sure that I'm available. And so from anywhere from singing to the musician, to preaching, to sharing the word in any capacity, whatever I can do, I'm a servant of the Lord. So I guess that's the best way to give my who am I statement.
All right. And so I know that you are a pastor. Tell us what church you pastor.
Henderson, North Carolina. I pastor Temple of Deliverance Church. I've been pastoring there total of 17 years total. So it's been an awesome experience pastoring there. Great church. I miss them dearly, but awesome church and a lovely city of Henderson. So. All
right. And we're going to talk about that. You've had. Since I've known you, you've been, I call you the worldwide traveling pastor. You have been connected to many. I know that you've done some things with Bishop Bloomer. You've been connected with the great women's conference, Blessed Art Thou Among Women. We look forward to having you yearly. I know that you've done many things, but you have been raised in a family of pastors. What was that like for you?
I grew up in the church. So as a child, we had a Pentecostal church. And it was a church that you was in church all day long. And then you went in the morning from Sunday school, and Sunday school kept going. Some Sundays we ate at church and kept on going to the night service. And so I was that child that said, when I grow up, I'm not going to church no more. From that point, I taught myself how to play drums, and I was singing. And so I was in the choir, and so that's really what kept me in church, was music. Otherwise, being that the length of time that we were in church, I didn't want any parts of it. And so the music is what really drawed me to being in church on a more consistent basis, and the desire and the love for the music as a whole, and just realizing how God had been beginning to anoint me over time. I really began to have a passion for the music. And then the word started coming to me in the midst of all of that. And sometimes we would break out in the middle of praise and worship. I'm leading praise and worship, and I'm preaching. And so it just kind of, matriculated over time. But I will say, my father was Bishop Fella Lewis. He was a bishop, I think, when I became 2 years old, he was ordained as a bishop, and he's been a bishop ever since. So they were preaching before I got here, and they're still preaching now. And it was interesting because growing up in the church and wanting to be a regular teenager, and people say, they say that preachers' kids are the worst kids. The truth is that they probably are, because we have to fight with so many things. Tired of being in church, we're rebelling over here. Then you got to deal with things in school and teachers knowing that you're a preacher's kid and the level of expectations are so high. And so you find yourself rebelling. And so it was a challenge. I did not know 20, 30 years ago that I would be a pastor. Had you asked me that, I'm like, no.
That was my next question. Did you have any idea that that would one day be your role, to become a pastor?
My desire was to be a singer. I wanted to be a professional singer. I wanted to have my own talk show, and I wanted to travel around the world. I will go to church because I love the Lord, but pastoring, no, not even preaching. I didn't have that on the list.
Right.
I will sing for the Lord, gospel music, but preaching, no ma'am, absolutely not.
Right. It's so funny that you would say a lot of what you said, because oftentimes I will talk to my daughter, and you hear people say what you say about preachers' kids, and my daughter would say those things like, we live in a glass house. People would look in and they have those expectations of preachers' kids, but we're only human, So I can imagine how you felt, and I have to say this, I love your parents. We met, we kind of exchanged families. I have to say this on TV because my mother threatened me to tell her baby that she loved her and she missed her.
Hey, mama. Hey.
And my brother Butch.
Hey, brother Butch. Love y'all.
Yes. So from the Warrell family, we love you, and and the Dessasaws, they just love you. But let's go back. So you never thought that you would ever be a pastor, but now that you're in that role, as a pastor, do you find that it has been challenging for you at some points? Because, well, let me ask you this first before I ask you that question. What age did you become a pastor?
I can give you a little bit more of my story. I think it'll help to just kind of lay the foundation for you. So I am the only girl out of 5 boys.
Wow.
And it's always customary for the men, the oldest son or the next son in line to become the pastor. And the only girl, and here I am as the pastor.
Right.
So that's one thing within itself. And just to kind of go moving from that level and going from there, I've been pastoring. I started pastoring when I graduated from college, so I was about 22 years old. And I started pastoring. I was a youth pastor prior to that. And then the Lord just elevated me over into taking over the ministry. And it ended up happening way faster than it had been planned. My father at the time had gotten sick, and I was going to the church, filling in for him because he was sick. His kidneys had failed. My mother was sick as well. She had lupus, and I was driving back from Greensboro because I stayed there, decided I wasn't moving back home, and I would drive back and fill in for them on Sundays. The people like me. They like hearing me preach, and I'm like, okay, well, nobody, most of the time, y'all know how it is. If it's not your pastor preaching, you don't want to hear the backup person. You don't want to hear the assistant. You don't want to hear any of them. And so I was like that person that would keep the people engaged. I guess because I was just kind of different. I don't know. But I would go and I would fill in, and I kept going and kept doing it. And this went on for some months. And the Lord dealt with my father and dealt with me as well. And I've been moving forward ever since the age of 22. I've been pastoring.
Wow.
I guess that tells my age.
Well, and that's okay. So I want to ask you, so coming in at 22, coming in having 5 brothers, and the mantle was passed on to you, what would you say to, here I am, I'm an elder, what would you say to women, young women that are coming up? What would you say to women that feel like they have the call on their life? What would you say to them that are in ministry?
Women that are in ministry, women that are aspiring to be in ministry, I would say the number one thing that you have to have is a firm foundation on who you are. Not just only a firm foundation on who you are, but what you want to do and your vision for actual ministry. Not be all over the place, not be scattered, but really just focus on exactly what it is that you want to do, and to know for yourself that God has called you. Right. And be able to have your own level of defense, because unfortunately there's still people out here that don't believe in women preachers, pastors, bishops. They don't believe in any of those things, and so it's going to require a little bit of strength, a little bit of tenacity, and you're going to have to be firm in who you are and what you're doing, because you're going to face so many different things. Right. I can give you an example. I'll never forget my first 2 years of pastoring. I met a pastor in the store, and I was excited about Jesus, telling everybody about Jesus, and he was passing out tracts, and I said, well, you know, I'm a pastor, and he said, oh, wonderful, wonderful. We exchanged contact information, and oddly enough, he called me, and when he called me, he said, oh, it's so great that you're a pastor, and oh, it's so wonderful that you're in ministry, and he said, I got a question for you. And I said, okay, you know, I thought we were having a great conversation, and then this man says to me, so, what makes you think you can pastor a church? You a woman. Mm-hmm. And I might have been 23 years old, and I'm like, did he just say this to me? Right. And so what I did at that point, because I had been in a place, in a position where I knew to respect those that are in leadership, I had to respect my elders, and I did not want to be disrespectful, because even though I was a pastor, I hadn't been a pastor my whole life, and so there were some things that God was working with me on, and not only that, God had to make me a pastor to get me to where I am. Hallelujah. But anyway, so with that being said, I immediately connected the phone with my father. Yes. And I told my father what happened, and I allowed my father to handle that situation. Mm-hmm. And I was torn, I was hurt. Mm-hmm. But then I said, you know what, Dad, I'm not quitting. Right. I said, people's lives are changing. People are being blessed. Yes. I'm not quitting. And so from that point on, I began to prepare myself and to understand, because most of the time as a woman, you know, they're looking for us to be a certain way, to deliver a certain type of message, or they're expecting a certain type of attitude from us. And I sit back and I just wait my turn. Yes. I sit back and I wait my turn. I try to prove myself to anybody or anything like that. I say, let the gifting speak for itself. Yes. I don't have to tell anybody I'm going to do this, this, and this. When I leave and I go into a place, however God is wanting me to minister, I get in there, I'm like, God, I'm depending on you. Yes. You got to handle this. That's right. And a lot of times I'm short, I'm little, they size me up and they're looking at me, and I already know it, but that just gives me energy. Yes. It gives me that push. I'm ready. Oh, I'm ready. When the opposing sides are against me, I'm ready to let God just explode and have his way. So, and his gift will make room. Yes, Lord. Definitely has. Over time, I can celebrate that, because it's been an awesome experience. That's right. I'm going to go another direction. Okay. I want to ask you about, so you have a talk show. Yes. Which is called Gravity Talks. And you are one of the co-hosts on that talk show. And so I want to ask you, as a pastor, we're dealing with the pandemic, right? And what is it like being in the role of a pastor during the pandemic? And I know Gravity Talk is about mental health, right? And so what is it like as a pastor having to make decisions in that role, and you're making decisions for everyone? What is that like? Because you know you want to keep everyone safe. So what is that like? You know, when you think about the safety, and I feel like that has to be a lot of pressure for a pastor. Well, can I be selfish first and then give you the spiritual answer? Sure. Okay, I'll do that first. Yeah. So selfishly, I'm getting a break. Praise Jesus. I've been in church my whole life, and to not have to go, Lord Jesus, come on God. Now. So that's my selfish answer. It's been a good break for me, you know, and just kind of getting that opportunity to relax. I love y'all. Now listen, I love y'all. Yeah. But we tired, and I can't go on vacation. And so, to be able to have that break on Sunday and I ain't got to shake 10,000 hands, I'm good.
And truthfully, that's so good that you're being honest about that, because I think on the flip side, virtually, I think some people are really tired. You get on social media and church is everywhere.
Yes.
Zoom, Facebook, everything. So I think that weighs a lot. But the question that I'm asking is, answer it for me on the other end, though.
On the other end, my heart goes out because I've noticed there's been a change, there's been a shifting in participation. We're losing some people.
Right.
We're losing people, and some people, they have their opinions about they're not in church and they really wasn't really serious about God and things like that. But when you're not really grounded and you're dealing with life itself, and church was the only place that you could go to get that level of release and refuge. And then it's not that you were late, it's not that you didn't feel like it that morning, you just cannot go, and it's not safe for you to be there and your life is in jeopardy, then that becomes an issue. And so of course we're trying to reach them with the preaching and things of that nature. However, when it came down to looking at it from that level, God had to open my eyes up, because we preach people to death, and that's just to be honest. And church and loving God and being a child of God is not just about preaching. We've got to teach people, but not only that, everybody receives and understands different connections with God from different levels. And I think that one of the things when you brought it up about Gravity Talks was my other way of being able to let the gospel, the Christian world know and understand there's more to it than just getting in church, lifting your hands, because we're not there.
Right.
And right now, I'm doing a show about mental health because I need church folks to know that it's okay not to be okay sometimes.
Right.
I struggle with, as a pastor, having some mental health issues, not mental illness, and that's the difference.
Right.
They put the stigma there, and they connect the stigma simply because they seem to think that there's something wrong when it's connected to mental health.
Right.
But if we don't take care of our mental health, then it becomes a mental illness.
Right.
And so we've got to go on vacations. We've got to have self-care. We've got to have all of these things. And when I first became a pastor, the struggle and the stress that everybody gave me because I wasn't married, because I wasn't this, because I wasn't tall enough, because I wasn't big enough, because I didn't eat ham. They had a problem with everything.
Right.
And so that was a lot of stress for me. I ended up with ulcers.
Right.
I ended up having to take some type of painkiller, and I was like, you know what, I'm not doing this. I'm not. And so I got to the point where I understand now, and I look back on the significance and the importance of how mental health was needed at that time. And now looking back on it, I would have been a lot better off had I got a therapist, had I got a counselor, had I sat down and talked to somebody. Right. Because I came out of a church, and I took over my father's church, but we transitioned the ministry altogether. But I came out of a church where, it was all about Jesus. If something was wrong, Jesus can handle it. You got to have faith. You got to believe in God, all of those things. And so with that being said, if something was wrong, it could never be a mental illness. It could never be a mental health issue. It had to be something demonic.
Well, and I'm glad that you said that, because that's what people need to know, that it's okay. It's okay. Pastors included, because you are the leader, it's okay for you to go and get help. You hear about so many pastors committing suicide, but it's okay to go and talk to someone, So I'm really glad to hear you say that, being in that, that profession, that it's okay to go and get some help. I'm sure you know of many that have committed suicide.
Yes.
Because they would not go and get some help. So being in the role of a pastor, and even being a woman pastor, I'm sure you have encountered many that needed to get mental health but wouldn't get mental health. Or what would you say to that? And we have the last few.
I would definitely say, pastors, listen, just come off of your throne for a minute and be human, and understand that there's help and there's support out there. If you can take high blood pressure medicine, insulin, Take anything with diabetes. If you can pick up a Tylenol for some help, you can definitely sit in a room on a couch and they can't tell your business. So definitely go get some mental help for your mental health.
All right, and that is just so good. And I just really want to tell you to just keep on doing what you're doing. It was so good to learn that you wear many hats.
Oh, tell me who can stand before us when we call on that great name, Jesus, Jesus, oh precious Jesus, we have the hello and God bless you. I am Pastor Natashia from Henderson, North Carolina. I pastor at Temple of Deliverance Church. And I want to say I'm excited to be on this sign to elevate today. And there is a word from the Lord. Not many days ago, the Lord had deposited in my spirit to tell you, don't be weary in well-doing, for in due season you shall reap if you faint not. The Lord told me to tell you that although you're experiencing levels of discomfort and uncertainty in the midst of a pandemic, God told me to tell you that He's doing certain things and He's doing them in a specific order. And He's connecting them in a certain way. And so He says, after a while, you're going to be able to understand exactly what God is doing. I know sometimes right now it seems as if God is punishing many of us. I know that sometimes it seems as if God has forgotten about many of us. But the Lord told me to tell you, just hold on just a little while longer. He says, because the very things that had to happen in 2020 simply happened because there were some things that God had to ordain and move out of the way, so that when you step into the 2021, there were some things that could not have access to go with you. And so the Lord says that He's using the word expiration as it relates to some of the things that you've lost. And the problem with many of us when it comes down to expiration is some of us want to take sour milk and make buttermilk and make biscuits. Some of us want to use old cheese and make blue cheese instead of saying that it's old, instead of saying that I don't need it anymore. But you've got to get to a place where you begin to understand that there was a date put on that thing. There was a date that was labeled on that thing to remind me and to let me know that if it's expired, then I've got to throw it away. I can't try to recycle it. I can't try to reuse it. I can't try to turn around and make it out to be something that I want. But when the date comes, I've got to be ready to release that thing. When the date comes, I've got to be ready to let it go. But the problem that we're having right now is that sometimes the very things that, although this is the issue that we're dealing with, and I want to share this really quickly, is that it doesn't look like it's expired. And we will look at it and say it still looks good. And a lot of times we'll take relationships and friendships and even church membership, and we'll look at it and we know deep down on the inside that we ought to end the thing. We know deep down on the inside that it's time for us to walk away. We know deep down on the inside it's time for us to change the chapter, turn the page, close the door, and move on. But because it looks good and because we don't want to have to deal with embarrassment, and because we don't want to have to explain something to somebody, or because somebody's sitting back waiting to say, I told you so, then we will put ourselves in a spoiled situation. Have you ever been around a perishable item that should have been thrown away, but you kept it? And the longer you kept it, the more it began to stink. The longer that you stayed around it, the more that it began to smell bad, to the point where you couldn't even be around it. And now the fumes have gotten so bad that they are germophobic and they can make you sick. That's the problem that issues in our bodies. It causes us to be depressed. Some of us, it causes us to lose sight and touch with God. But we've got to get to a place where we begin to say, if I wasn't born with that, then I can live without it. And I've got to begin to start listening to my instincts and knowing that what God put in me, it spoke to me and told me that that is a dead thing. And it's time for me to move on, because Achan showed us best when they were out there and they were going from camp to camp, and God told them, don't take the accursed thing, don't take it with you. And when Achan got himself in the midst and he began to look at the spoil, oh my God, something that spoiled, and Achan took it with him, and when he took it with him and they got to the next battle, he couldn't win, he couldn't have the victory because he had the spoil thing with him. I come to let you know that God is saying the reason why there's been a delay, the reason why there's been a hold up is because there's some things that you've been dealing with. I'm talking about spoil things, spoil men, spoil women, and spoil brats. You can't satisfy them, you can't please them, and all they're doing is getting the best of you and taking you out your mind. But I come today to let you know, if it's expired, don't put it in the recycling bin. If it's expired, say it's so hard to say goodbye, but I'm gonna tell you bye, 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 because it's time for me to go to the next level. I've been waiting, anticipating for long enough. I will reap the harvest, and I ain't coming with a limp, because I'm getting rid of everything that's holding me down. Wherever you are right now, lift your hand and say, today I'm releasing the perishable item in my life. Today I'm letting go. You can keep the money you owe me. You can keep the heartbreak. You don't have to apologize. You ain't got to say you're sorry. But I need you to do me a favor and release me